Amy Morris, that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now back to Balance of Power with Joe Matthew.
All right, Amy, thank you so much. Amy Morris spending the day with us here as we kick off hurricane season in Washington. Everyone's up on the front of the paper with something about FEMA, and we'll be talking about that throughout the day here with questions about whether the agency is ready following the impact of DOGE. Nice to know it's June, though, right? It's beautiful out. We've got a gorgeous week here in Washington, which is good if they're the folks working at the White House. They've been outdoors for a couple of weeks now building this massive structure for the UFC fight. And there's news. If you're with us on YouTube, check it out. Producer James just told me they got the canopy up for this thing. So I guess the fighters will presumably not be like in the direct sun, swatting at flies while they're punching the guy in the cage with them or gal. This is on the president's birthday. They're doing this big fight. Not to be confused with the concert that the president was talking about over the weekend. You saw his note on Truth Social. Because last time we spoke here Friday, all we knew was that Vanilla Ice and Flo Rida were still on board. Everybody else, that was the day Bret Michaels. Vanilla Ice and Flo Rida were still on board. Everybody else, that was the day Bret Michaels said, no, the atmosphere is poison. Others dropped out of this thing. McBride's gone, others. And the president was not happy to see this. The idea was that it was becoming politicized. And what they had been told was a bipartisan event to celebrate America's 250th birthday. We should have a giant Make America Great Again rally for 250, he says, instead of having overpriced singers who nobody wants to hear. Why were they invited then? Whose music is boring, and yet who do nothing but complain. Cancel it, he said, just like I canceled my involvement with the failing and unsafe to be in Kennedy Center. I have to go down here a little bit here because he goes deep into the Kennedy Center here, the president framing himself as the answer, and in fact will be headlining the event now. So if there were questions about the way this was all going to go, I think they have been answered. There's another post here, James, I don't know if you can find it for me, where he actually mentions that. Here we go. Talks about artists having the yips. So here's how it goes. I'm thinking about bringing the number one attraction anywhere in the world. The man who gets much larger audiences than Elvis in his prime. And he does so without a guitar. The man who loves our country more than anyone else, and the man who some say is the greatest president in history, the GOAT. Donald J. Trump to take the place of these highly paid third-rate artists and give a major speech rallying the country. That's what we have to look forward to here. It's not what he's talking about in the White House today. He's got the speaker in the White House, Mike Johnson, with another tough one here as lawmakers come back to town. The House won't be here till a bit later on in the week, but they need to come up with a plan on the anti-weaponization fund before they can pass a bill to fund ICE and Border Patrol. This is where we start with Nathan Dean, Bloomberg Intelligence, of course, our senior U.S. policy analyst. You going to the fight? You going to the concert? You got kids?
I would have gone to CNC Music Factory. I would have been
Yeah,
there.
they pulled out, huh?
Yeah, producer Matt and I would have been there first, front row.
Is that true?
Oh, yeah.
They're going to have a Ferris wheel down on the mall. You got to bring the kids for that, right?
There's supposed to be a World Cup viewing platform, so we'll figure out something.
Something for everybody. The way Politico framed this was Hell Week for Congress. Yeah. Like they're showing up at Paris Island. Something needs to break here. The White House either needs to pull back on this anti-weaponization fund or tell lawmakers what guardrails are going to be put in place. Which do you think is more likely?
I think the White House pulls back here. And the reason why, and I probably am a little bit about a consensus here, is that what Congress wants right now is they are in the stage where they should pass something, get it off their desk, and turn to the elections. I mean, most of the lawmakers don't want to be here right now. It's beautiful today, but they want to be home campaigning.
Right.
Because every day they're here in Washington, it's another day that somebody's back home campaigning against them. Because they have a reconciliation bill, they have FISA, they have a housing bill, they have a crypto bill. All these people want this stuff done before they leave. And there's only like 18 to 24 days, depending on which chamber you are, that they're here before the recess. So I think ultimately what happens here is that you begin to see that it's more important to get stuff off Congress's plate and get towards the election and towards the midterms than it is to have these fights over weaponization funds. But that's just my view.
Now, just to back up, if this is confusing for people, this was going to be codified in legislation that would also pay for, in the reconciliation package, that would pay for ICE and Border Patrol, right?
Correct.
Is there a way that these could be stripped apart and have a standalone bill if it's not, in fact, withdrawn? For the anti-weaponization fund, why should the rest of this be all held up?
Well, they just don't have the votes, and this is where President Trump. President Trump.
It's got to be in reconciliation.
It's got to be in reconciliation. Okay. You're not going to get the 60 votes on this anywhere close to that.
Right.
You're probably not even going to get the 50 votes, which is why we're actually having this conversation right now. So I think what happens here is, in order to get the reconciliation bill, which is $72 billion for the Department of Homeland Security, not really much of all of a market impact except for a couple of private prison stocks. Other than that, it's not that big of a deal for the markets, but the Republicans need it off their plate because it protects President Trump from having these fights over ICE tactics through the rest of his presidency.
Right.
I think the president ultimately realizes that he wants that more than he wants a weaponization fund that most Republicans probably don't support. And as a result, I think that's why this package probably moves, but in a slower fashion than it was, to the detriment maybe of housing and crypto.
Wow, boy, you just said a lot. So this is a self-inflicted wound, then, that this was not something that needed to be discussed until the settlement was announced from the DOJ.
Well, absolutely. All of this is just a self-inflicted wound for the Republican side because this $72 billion package, if you were to just say no strings attached, no ballroom, no anti-weaponization fund.
Is ballroom still in it?
It's not in it right. I don't think it's in it right now. I think that's been pulled out. But
okay, it has.
President Trump has consistently said, he's even said, if you don't include this, I may even veto it.
Right.
And if that's the case, this should be a situation where it should be easy peasy lemon squeezy and just get this out. But, the Republicans, as we saw back in May before they went to recess, it's difficult. And by the way, we also have a recess tied to Juneteenth coming up. So time's ticking here.
Wow. All right. And it's so easy. They missed a deadline. This technically was the day the president said he wanted it on his desk. Reconciliation, that is, the 1st of June. Clearly, that's not happening. What do we think he's talking about with Speaker Johnson, then?
I think they're trying to figure out is how do they get it done?
Does Mike Johnson say, you've got to pull this back? I can't do this on my end.
I think Mike Johnson has to say that because, look, I don't think the votes are there for this. This would play directly into the Democratic hands going into the elections.
Right.
When the number one issue right now for the voters is affordability, not things like, I'm just even going, sorry, it's affordability.
Sure.
And when you're dealing with things like weaponization funds and you're not dealing with things like affordability, it plays directly into the Democrat hands.
And giving taxpayer money to people who assaulted cops is a very easy political line for Democrats to use here. So you wonder where we're going and whether Bill Cassidy and John Cornyn and Tom Massey are the ones who make the difference. If the president had not upset his own party to the extent that he has with these primaries, would this pass a little easier or no?
Oh, absolutely. Henrietta Trey's on surveillance this morning said, we now have a YOLO conference. Well, and I love that so much. I'm stealing it and giving Henrietta the credit here. But you only live once. And now you have Senator Tillis, Senator Cassidy, Senator Cornyn, Tom Massey. They are going to have the most enjoyable another 6 to 8 months.
Just blocking everything.
They can just do whatever they want, and there's no ramifications for it.
Or voting yes, for instance, on war powers, which we might see this week.
Exactly.
Does John Cornyn really have that in his DNA? He's going to be a rebel now all of a sudden?
I don't think he's going to be a rebel, but I think if it ever comes push to shove, President Trump's going to say, I want you to do something.
Yeah.
Senator Cornyn's going to be like, I'm not taking the
man.
call.
Yeah.
When it comes to the war powers resolution, I think it does pass this week. But it doesn't really matter all that much. It's not going to change President Trump's mind.
We're certainly not going to be signing anything. And you wonder if he brings us to the Supreme Court to contest the constitutionality of the law as he continues to question. You said something big, though. This holds up crypto.
Yep.
This holds up ag. What else?
So the housing bill.
The housing bill.
The housing bill, the ag bill.
One bipartisan accomplishment they could have trumped this summer.
Well, and the irony is that you have a bipartisan accomplishment against a bipartisan accomplishment here with housing. Because you have the House bill, which actually stripped out language tied to build-to-rent communities.
Yeah.
The Senate bill includes it.
Right.
There's been a provision. Both sides are saying, we're going to jam you up with the other one. And I think the House wins here because ultimately I don't think the Senate has the time to actually go back to the bill and rework it and get it through the Senate again.
Yeah.
It's just much easier to pass it. But the problem is right now is, does the Senate Banking Committee, like Tim Scott and Elizabeth Warren, do they focus on crypto or do they focus on housing? I think they're going to focus on housing right now. So I still think the crypto bill can pass.
Okay.
But my spidey sense is tingling here because you had Jamie Dimon over the weekend saying that he had concerns with ethics language tied to this crypto bill. I'm still here thinking that it's going to pass, but just
So you could be out with new odds on clarity at some
Correct.
point, is what you're saying.
Yep.
Well, that's remarkable. This is the year it was supposed to happen. It might not.
I'm still at 70%.
All right.
But I will just say right now
Most likely
that
will.
I still think it's going to pass. But, time is ticking here. And if it doesn't get done before the August recess, then I certainly think it may struggle.
Do we need to find out today, if they want to vote Orama tomorrow night, we need to find out today what happens with this anti-weaponization fund, right?
Yeah, I think they have to make an announcement within the next few
Like
hours.
this afternoon.
Yep.
You ready for that, James? We're going to have breaking news here, either in this program or the late edition to Balance of Power on this, which will be truly remarkable. If they got CNC back in there, you'd go to the concert?
Producer Matt and I were all up and all ready to do it.
So, we called Nathan America's dad for a lot of reasons here. He's one of the best coaches of youth football in the Washington, D.C. area. Your season ended over the weekend, right?
We had 2 first-place teams that lost in the first round.
Wow.
So it was heartbreaking.
Heartbreak, yes. But I will say, don't try funny business on the sidelines when this guy's coaching or reffing. It's America's dad. Well, I won't say you dropped anybody, but you stopped them in their tracks.
We had a little bit of chirping going on.
Wow.
And,
the parents on the sidelines, man, they need their own reality show.
I had to be reminded by my wife that they're just 4th graders. So.
Very well. Good job, Dad. Yeah. Thank you for the update. He's still at 70% on clarity. We'll let you know if this changes. The great Nathan Dean, Bloomberg Intelligence, senior U.S. policy analyst, a dear friend of the program. And if you're a subscriber to our podcast, you get Nathan's as well, right? Nathan's Washington Policy Pulse podcast. We don't have anything that's got a cool name like that on the podcast feed here on Balance of Power. Could we have like the BOP Pulse or something? I'm Joe Matthew in Washington. We'll assemble our political panel coming up next. We've got a lot to talk about.